Well, hey, everybody, glad to be with you again. And today's topic is how to set yourself up for success. Now, David, last week you had a stand in for me, and it's kind of hard because when you get somebody like Shelly, I'm like, man, I don't have a job anymore.
You don't. She was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. And that was my joke. I don't think I need you anymore, Chris.
That's
I'll
right.
just I'll just bring on people like Shelly. She was wonderful. So
Yeah, folks, if you missed that one, you need to go back and listen because it's how a corporate executive created her own personal brand business. And Shelly just shares her journey and her story. And David, you have walked with her through that process over the last few years as her coach and friend. And it was just awesome to hear somebody who really has been successful. And I think that kind of even ties into today's topic of what do we have to do to truly be successful? Because I think everybody wants to be successful, right? When you talk to, I'd say everybody I talk to, I'm sure there's some people out there that may be kind of lost and struggling and not thinking about this, but the majority, right, wants to have some level of success or wants to go to some new level of success in their life, business, whatever. But most people, many people at least, don't know how to get there from where they are. It's kind of like I was talking to somebody the other day that even businesses that are successful, like in our community, I was talking to a friend yesterday about this. They're successful, but it's almost been accidental because they've stumbled into success, but they couldn't necessarily repeat it or put together a strategy to
right.
go to the next level because, they just did what they kind of saw everybody else doing.
They couldn't really teach it to somebody else.
Correct. Yeah, because for them it was like they had an idea or maybe they bought a business and they started, just doing the business, but they didn't think about maybe what does it take to really replicate this or to go to next levels of success. So I think that's where the challenge is for a lot of people. But the good news is that success leaves clues, as they say, right? So you can look at what people have done that are farther ahead of you, that have done what you want to do, and you can really, what I say is imitate them first until you get your footing, and then you can kind of innovate to your own style later. And so that's where coaches, mentors, just examples out there, even if it's kind of, I'd say there's mentors from a distance. Maybe you read their books or you follow them on social media. You don't have a personal relationship with them, but you follow them, you kind of dissect what have they done? What are they doing that I could then replicate? And I'll remember a few years ago, I heard a local entrepreneur who owns I think he's owned like 10 businesses or created 10 businesses here in our community, but he owns like four right now that he's actively operating. And he said, he asked the question to a young professionals group. He said, has somebody done what you want to do? And then he's like, well, then why would you think you can't do it?
Right.
And I thought that was a pretty powerful, question because a lot of times people just doubt themselves and think, well, I know that so and so did this or that person created that course or wrote that book or whatever, build that business. I can't do that. Well, why can't you? Right? Because that person did figure things out. They found their way forward. Why can't you find your way forward? So, what has been kind of your journey where you've thought about this, where you've had to even kind of go on this journey of success yourself and even learn from people who have been or just farther down the road?
Yeah, one of the things I've really learned in all this is that almost always success is possible.
Hmm.
I mean, there are times where you can't be successful in something, but the vast majority of the time, success is absolutely possible. The real question is, are you willing to do what it takes to
Hmm.
achieve success? And by that, I'm not meaning, are you willing to like be unethical or immoral or to cheat or
Right.
to lie or steal or things like that? I'm not talking about those types of things. What I'm talking about is, do you have the courage
Hmm.
to do the work? Do you have
Hmm.
the courage to put yourself out there? Do you have the dedication to
Yeah, it's
keep
that
showing
commitment
up
piece. Right?
that every single day and keep going and going and going and the humility to just try?
Hmm.
Like, okay, I'm going to try this. And a lot of the problems that we run into, and this is why I thought Chelly's story was so inspirational, is that like Chelly's story is that she tried many different things over a year's worth of time
Hmm.
that didn't end up working for her.
Hmm.
She did this and that didn't really end up working, and she did that, and she didn't quit, she just pivoted.
Right.
Well, maybe it's not exactly that. Maybe it's this. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's not exactly that. I'll try this. And she just kept pivoting until all of a sudden, bam, things started to really click and take off for her. And I'm like, this is, it sounds so simple. And we read stories of how many times did Thomas Edison try to invent the light bulb unsuccessfully.
Right.
And I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I know it's in the thousands.
Right.
I'm like, how many other people were trying to invent the light bulb? I'm sure there
Yeah.
were plenty in his
Sure.
contemporary, his peers of that day that were trying to do it. But you know what? There was only one that was willing to try thousands of times.
Hmm.
And as a result, he was the one that found the solution. And this is, I think, so much a part of this journey is that, yes, you're not going to walk in and on day one say, wow, everything's amazing and perfect. I've answered every question. It worked out great.
Hmm.
No, the reality is you're probably you're going to get some of it right and some of it wrong.
Yeah.
And you keep going and going and going until you get more right and less wrong. And that's just the journey. And that my trainer at the gym has we have a goal that, like, what is the goal for each exercise? And the goal, and it's kind of a running joke between the two of us, and the goal is suck less more often. And so he'll even say, like, how did you, he would look at me because, so how do you think you did on that set? And I looked at him the last time and I smiled and I said, I think that one sucked less more often. And he just sat there with a big old smile on his face because that a boy. Like,
Yeah.
you got it. Like that, we're not even worried about perfection. We're just worried about getting better.
Yeah.
And it just continue to get, but keep going. And it's all the time. If you're something that you're not really good at, maybe you're struggling with being a good salesperson, maybe you're struggling with how to market or how to write or how to communicate. You know how to get better at it?
Keep doing it.
Do it. You didn't learn to ride a bicycle as a child by staring at the bike or reading a book about the bike.
Right.
You learn how to ride a bicycle by getting on the doggone thing and falling over a few times until you got it.
Well, it's interesting you can bring that up because this morning I just had this passing thought, just that, when I started my business almost a decade ago now, I was one of the first things I did was I started blogging. And I enjoy writing, and I always have been a decent writer growing up and in college and everything. And so it was one of those things where I was like, that's an easy place for me to start. I didn't write a book on day one. I started blogging on day one and writing little. And I look back at some of those and I'm like, some of those are really good pieces of content. Some of them I'm like, I would, today compared, all these years later, I would do it differently. But at the same time, I hadn't thought about really my blogs kind of putting in the reps to prepare me for writing a book or to create a course or to create the next, speech to go present or whatever. So, but you're right. It's putting in the work. And I think this is where so much of it really does come down to. And I will say this before we jump into what I call three critical actions we have to take to help us get there and help us truly set ourselves up for success is, do you even know what success looks like for you? Do you even have that defined? Because, it's kind of like you said, like when you go to the gym, if you don't have a goal that you're really working toward, then you could just go and be busy. You can jump on the bike, you could hit the treadmill, you could lift some weights, you could do whatever. But you go there, especially working with a trainer, with a specific intention for that workout that day. And I think in business and in life in general, a lot of people, once again, we want success. But if you really ask them, what is that to you? What does success look like? Very few people can let that roll off their tongue quickly. Would you agree?
100%. And the thing is, everyone thinks like success is like mega riches and for a lot of people, it's not.
No.
And a lot of people don't want a 7-8 figure business that with all the responsibilities and all the things they just want the freedom from being able to do their own thing. They have enough money to take care of all their needs, enough money to pay all the bills and to let them do the things they want to do in life. And then they have the time freedom to live the way they want to live. And your success path is only defined by you, and you have to just set that clearly up front. Otherwise, you're just going to be trying to live everyone else's dream.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day. One of my favorite books by John Maxwell is called "Put Your Dream to the Test."
Mm.
And in that, he gives 10 questions about any dream you have. So any goal, any vision you have, right? And one of them that will pop into my mind occasionally is your dream really your dream? And I've had to have that conversation internally and in prayer with God at times, like, am I doing what I really feel called to do that truly is my dream? Or am I doing something that I saw somebody else do that I thought, well, I should do it because that's what they've done? And so I think that this, as we tee up this conversation today about success, is your dream, is your goal really yours, or is it something that you think you're supposed to want or supposed to do? Because to your point, David, more and more people, they just want that time and financial freedom. They don't want to be the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg building billion-dollar companies, right? Like that's because that is a monstrosity to manage and deal with. And most people aren't capable and equipped and prepared to do that anyway. But I'm convinced that everybody can create their own thing to provide some kind of a service, to provide some kind of expertise that can truly be valuable to a group of people and provide them with the lifestyle that they want. In fact, there's a guy that I've been following on LinkedIn that's grown his like newsletter to over 500,000 people. His whole thing is about building a lifestyle solopreneur business. And he said, and he left the corporate space where he was very successful, and he said, he's like that. And he said something the other day. His name's Justin Welsh. He said something the other day that jumped out at me. It was basically the idea that, basically, once again, I've heard this before from others, but it reminded me like build a life that you don't need a vacation from.
I like that one.
Because for him and his wife both have solopreneur businesses that they're running, and he does more business coaching. She does more financial coaching. But what they've done is they're building something that is very lucrative financially, but they can do it on their timetable. They can do it on their terms and have the freedom to enjoy life together as a couple, to enjoy life in general. And I think that's what a lot of people really want at the end of the day. But too many people think, well, I've got to build this big corporation in order to get that. But I'm reminded there's a story that I heard years ago about a guy down in like the Caribbean or something on the beach, and he said talking to this guy that has a fishing boat, and he's like, and he was selling fish and things on the side, and he's like, you're really good at this. He's like, well, you could build a company and have like a fleet of boats and have people working for you and all this, and and he kept going on and on and on. And he's like, and then one day you could retire and just enjoy fishing with your boat and whatever. And he's like, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
why do I need
all that?
why do I need to do all that to get to what I'm already doing? And I'm like, and I feel like a lot of people are chasing something, and I know I've fallen prey to this at times. We chase something that we think we have to do or are supposed to do in order to get to where we want to be. And then we realize, wait a second, what I really wanted was back there anyway. So anyway, not to belabor this whole point, but define success for yourself is really the first key step. But once you know what that looks like for you, once you have that vision, once you're clear on that, then there's what I think there are three critical things that you need to do to give yourself a better chance to set yourself up for success. And the first one is developing the right mindset. And David, we talk about this in various ways from time to time on different, shows here, but without the right mindset, success is going to be elusive, right? I mean, it's if we can't get it right in our head first about how we, winning the mental game, then we're going to struggle with actually implementing and staying the course, like you said, because, and you even mentioned in the interview with Shelly, like there's times where we want to have the white flag in our hand and throw it, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all have those moments, that we all have those times where we're sitting there going, that's it. I've had two, and I always viewed the entrepreneur journey as like riding a roller coaster, and it's up and down. You have days where you think, man, I'm like brilliant. I'm like
invincible.
I'm invincible. I'm the smartest guy around. This guy, I am so good at this. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, I'm a complete idiot. Everything is going wrong. Nothing is working. And you're just like, and you have those are the days where you have that white flag in your hand. You're like, I don't know, man. This is every time I turn around, it's another set of problems. And you just have to learn how to smooth those highs and lows out and find a way to create a more stable path for yourself and realize you're not invincible. You're
Hmm.
not the smartest person on earth. You're not the best at everything, but you're also not the worst. And
Right.
you're not a failure. You're riding more in the middle. Give yourself some stability and get your mind around, okay, I'm not gonna like go get cocky when I'm doing really good, but I'm also not gonna get overly down when challenges start popping up and I have to deal with problems.
Yeah.
And again, it's that controlling your mindset of approaching like, okay, everything that's coming is manageable. Everything that's happening is within my ability to solve. I
Hmm.
may not know the solution today, but I can find the solution if I just will prepare myself, if I will get myself into the right space, if I will be willing to consider all my options, if I have people around me. I think that's something that's a big part of all this is you need to have the right people around you that you can talk to, that you can say, "Hey, Chris, what are we supposed to do here?"
Yeah.
Like, and between the two of you, you can talk it out and you can start coming up with ideas and start saying, well, maybe we should think about this, or maybe we should think about that. And that then spurs things inside of you. That has happened to me so many times with other people in my life as I go and talk to them, and I'm just completely befuddled and stuck
Yeah.
on what to do about a problem, and they just get me to think about it differently. And as a result, all of a sudden, I start seeing another way of solving it that I never considered before.
Well, that's the importance of coaching and community, right? That we build into our program, especially because we know that, right? We know we need that expertise help sometimes. Sometimes we just need the support group of these people get where I am. They get that then they can just see things from a different perspective. It's that whole, idea of watching a car crash. Different people stand in different positions, see things happening differently. Well, even in success or when you're working towards something positive, sometimes you feel like you're bumping up against the wall and somebody's over here kind of to the side going, yeah, but have you thought about that door on the side?
Right.
Like you're against the wall, yes, but around the corner is a door.
Right.
Go through the door. I was looking over, I have a variety of quotes that I write on index cards and stick them on my office wall. And Wally Amos, who created the famous Amos cookies, um,
Mhm.
I read this a long time ago and I thought it was powerful. He said, you have to have the trust and faith to let go and not agonize. Don't waste your time worrying. Worrying is not preparation. Analyze the situation and focus on solutions. There's always an answer.
Mhm.
And that's what you're saying, right? There's always a way to figure something out. But in the moment when you're feeling low, when you're dealing with those lows, it feels like there is no answer. And that's why it's so important to have good people around you to help you.
100%. I mean, I'm convinced that so much of success and failure in business is defined by your inner circle, the people that you rely on. Like if you, and especially if you are around people who are not entrepreneurial. And this isn't
Mhm.
even a knock on them as people.
Right.
They may be wonderful human beings. They may be great people. However, if they don't understand what it's like to have your own business, if they
Mhm.
don't understand what it's like to have all the responsibility ultimately ends at you, like
Mhm.
I can't blame my boss
Right.
because I don't have one. Like if there's a problem and it has to be solved, I can't point a finger anywhere.
Right.
It all has to come back to me as being ultimately responsible for everything. And if you don't have people who are used to living in that space, if you don't have people in your life who are used to this is the daily challenges that we face. Like I have to find more money. I have to get more sales. I have to
Right.
get more stuff going on here. I have to do this. I have to do that. And there's no one else to look at. I have to find out how to do it. I have
Yeah.
to solve these customer problems. I have to make this customer journey more efficient and more smooth for my clients.
Yeah.
All of these things are there. And I look at all that and I go, you have to be the one to do it. And
Mhm.
you have to find the pieces and the people to do it. And so, yeah, I mean, all of that comes down to you have to have people around you who can,
Yeah.
who understand this,
Yeah.
who can empathize with your journey and who can support you in it.
Yeah. It's the whole thing. And you and I have talked about this. Like we're all gonna have bad days, but especially when you have, a partnership and people around you helping you, you don't want to have a bad day on the same day, right?
Right.
And, the thing is, we can't control every external factor going on around us. We can't control the economy. We can't control what's happening politically. We can't control what's happening even, inside our own homes most of the time. However,
True.
what we can control is how we're going to approach it mentally, our mindset about it. And instead of melting down, saying, okay, what is a way to navigate this bump in the road, this challenge right now? And some are greater and some are less, obviously. And I think too, over time, when you truly understand this mental, roller coaster, as you said, I think that's where the highs don't necessarily feel as high,
Right.
and the lows definitely don't feel as low. And
But then life
and
feels
you
a
and
little
you
more
realize,
safe.
yeah, you've got more of that stability. And
Right.
and the good thing, even if you think, well, man, I wish the highs felt high. Well, yeah, but when the highs feel so high and things don't go right, then the lows feel lower, right? They
Right.
feel worse. So when you sometimes we give ourselves too much credit and we think, like you said, we're the smartest person in the world. Well, then guess what? When the next thing doesn't work, you feel like you're the dumbest person in the world. Well, those are two
Uh-huh.
extremes. And
Uh,
it's like, but if you realize I can figure things out, but I'm not as brilliant as I may want to be or think I am. But I'm also, like you said, I'm not as bad and dumb as I think I am sometimes either.
exactly. And it's not about devaluing yourself. It's just more about
Right.
having, a good, reasonable picture of yourself of
Sure.
like, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that, and these areas are not my strengths, and I
Yeah.
need help in those areas. I need other people to help me get through those areas. And it's just more about being realistic, and that the highs and the lows are ultimately what kick a lot of people out of the gate
Yeah.
because it creates that whiplash effect
Yeah.
and it knocks you out because it's too hard and it's too painful to go from that high super
Yeah.
high. And yeah, we all do like that feeling when we think we're
Sure.
the greatest in the world at whatever it is that we're doing. But then the other side, we don't, it comes with a cost. Like if you're willing to let yourself get that high, you're probably also willing to let yourself get that low.
Right.
And that's where you're in control of your own mindset, and you got to be willing to just kind of be willing to moderate a little bit and take the top 20% and the bottom 20% off and live in the middle
Right.
60 where
Yeah.
it's a little more reasonable.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So get the right mindset. The second thing here is you need to create the right environment. And I think this is overlooked too, but I think people are getting this more and more. When you look at kind of what's happened post COVID and people thinking about that their work environment, where why was there that great resignation, where people are like, I'm out, I'm not going back to the office and whatever. Right now, the pendulum swinging back, and companies are saying, no, you got to come back to the office. You can't
Right.
just be at home all the time. In a lot of cases, um, so there once again things reset and balance, but the reality is we live in a distracting world, and wherever whatever your space is that you work, you need to really make sure that you're fostering your success, because if you're easily distracted, and many of us are, I mean, we're, ADD, I think, is kind of a societal challenge. Even those who have like truly extreme diagnosed levels of attention deficit issues, I think we all have it to a level just because of so much information flying at us. It's hard to stay focused, right? So putting yourself into an environment that helps you focus, and that could sometimes, I mean, that, like, what does your home office look like? David, you talked in the past, like you like memorabilia, you like going to the trading card place, and you obviously behind you have different things like that. You create an environment that you enjoy, and then, like, for me,
Right.
I read a lot. I enjoy the books I read. I enjoy kind of being in this space. So that's what my home office looks like, So now when you're an entrepreneur and you can work, wherever you want to, you have control of that. Sometimes, obviously people and companies, they're kind of stuck, right? They're stuck with what they've got, but you can still try to work with what you've got to try to make it, helpful to you. But, um, really thinking about what are the conditions that help you thrive? What is it that, like, some people say, I can't deal with quiet all the time. Like, so I'm an only child, and I grew up and I could never do homework with a TV on in the background, listening to music, anything like that. I was very, like, for me, silence was really important I didn't live in a noisy house as an only child, right? It was just me as a kid. And so, but whereas my wife, she's one of four, and her house was constantly noisy. I mean, they kind of just operated in constant motion and noise. So for her, she works all the time as a teacher, even on stuff for the lessons ahead and everything. She's watching a TV show, she's typing on her laptop, and I'm like, I've got to go to my office and hide from the noise. And I've got three kids, so for her, our chaos is like what she grew up in. For me, it's disruptive.
Right.
So I think that's a really important thing to think about is what are the conditions that help you focus, and what has that meant to you over the years?
Well, I think you said something earlier, which is, create the business that you don't want to take a vacation from. And I
Mm,
think that is a similar thing for your environment. Create the environment you don't want to get away from.
yeah.
Create the environment you like being in. And
Mm,
so when it comes time to go work, like, how many of us have, like, back in the days when we had a job, going to a business or a organization where we worked, and we just didn't like the space very
yeah.
much. We were just like, oh, I'm gonna go sit in here, and I'm sitting in my little cubicle, and I'm and it's not private really, and I'm just like in a cubicle farm or
Right.
whatever, and I don't get to see outside. And I'm stuck inside except on lunch break where I could actually go out and see the sun or get fresh air. I mean,
You're making it sound like prison.
didn't know.
Can
You
feel
said
that way,
that.
can it?
It can feel that way, but it does. It gets very depressing, and it gets just. I just don't want to. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be there. I want to. Just even walking. You have that. I had. There was a stretch where I did a temporary job when this is back before I started my entrepreneurial journey. My wife had lost her job, and we needed work to fill the gap while we're figuring out what the next step is, because she was looking for another job, but we didn't have anything. And unemployment was only going to go so far in terms of supporting our family of five.
Yeah.
And so I took a job, working. It was just a temporary job working for this company, and thankfully they let me do it. Once I got trained, they let me do it from home. But while I was there, I loathed working in that environment, in that office.
Mhm.
The people that were there, it was a struggle. And I'm just trying to do the smile and just be happy and positive and
Mhm.
keep a good attitude and keep going. But it was such a negative environment.
Yeah.
It was such a political and just unpleasant environment to be. And you literally are sitting there like, oh my word, when is 5 o'clock going to get here so that I can go home?
Right.
And I still to this day remember very clearly. I was sitting in my car. I had gone out to go get some food for lunch. So, because we had taken our lunch break, I ran over wherever it was. I don't remember, some local little restaurant to get a sandwich for lunch. And I am sitting in my car staring at the front doors. And I am kidding you not, my legs were frozen.
Did not want to go.
My entire body was like, I don't want to walk through those front doors. I am sitting there having a conversation with myself saying, David, you have to walk through the front doors. And it was like my entire physical body
Wow.
was like fighting me, didn't want to go back in there. And it was that unpleasant. And I'm like, that environment, like I said, if that was my full-time job and I had to go there every day,
Yeah.
it would not have lasted long.
Yeah.
The only reason I was able to finish the contract that they hired me for was because they let me, okay, you're trained, you can now go and do it from home. I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't have to sit here around this every day. And then I finished it and it was fine.
Right.
But I it having an environment that you actually like, that's productive for you, like for you, you need quiet and a space where it's not a lot of distractions. For other people, it's different. For me, I like having something on in the background so
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm just sitting here all alone, which
Right.
I am most of the time, but
Yeah.
I don't feel that way. I feel like there's life around me. And you have to determine that for you, because that determines how productive you're going to be. That
Yeah.
determines your attitude about wanting to work in your business. Because if you don't like going to work,
Yeah.
you're not going to like doing your business. So
Yeah.
Those two have to be in sync.
Well, and that's where, like, I think, you see people, they love to go to the coffee shops. They go,
Right.
Starbucks, Panera Bread, wherever they like to be. I've had friends who are like, I just like being where there's, like you said, there's people around, there's something happening, but they can still focus within that environment. For as me, I'm a people person and a connector. So I'm like, I want to meet everybody that walks in the door. I'm like the dog. So we have a little, this is a distraction, I guess. We have a little dog who we saw some dogs on the beach while we were, in Florida, and our little Yorkie, I'm like, she would be 1,000 miles away from us. She's like, she's got to go say hi to everybody. There's these other dogs that are just like right there with their people, and I'm like, yeah, our
Right.
dog would not do well in this environment. I feel like that dog when I go to places, right? Like I feel like I'm the, hey guys, hey. So maybe my dog and I are a lot alike, and I didn't
I
realize
think
it until
so.
just now. But
I think
yeah,
so.
but yeah. So because I've tried the coffee shop thing, I thought, oh, this is cool. It's a laptop. Yeah, just go, and
I
I'm
just
like,
feel distracted when I go there.
yeah, and it doesn't work for me. But I know people who that's kind of their sweet spot, right? And so we're all wired differently, and so finding the right environment to be successful is important. I remember years ago, I haven't done this in a long time, but just being out in nature and just even sitting like on a park bench and just it's semi quiet, right? It's not noisy because there's not a ton of people around necessarily, but just finding a place at a local park that's kind of in a nice environment by a lake and whatever. I've done that before, and I've had very productive days where I'm like, okay, I'm out in nature. I'm not distracted by a bunch of people necessarily, but I'm not stuck at home either. So I think sometimes we need to mix it up to get ourselves kind of in a fresh perspective. But whatever it looks like for you, create the right environment, and that's the nice thing about building your own business. You can control that, and you should control that if you're going to really fuel your creativity and focus. So once you have the right mindset, once you're creating the right environment, now here's the thing, David, and you kind of talked to this at the very beginning. You have to put forth the required effort, right, to have success. It doesn't happen just because you want it. And I think that's where in our society, there's a lot of people that want success. But what you said at the very beginning of the show, you have to be willing to put in the work and do the thing that needs to get done. And this is where we see a lot of people falter is, and I know for myself early on, and I've shared this story probably way too many times, even on this show, but I started my business and I expected quick results, big, not just quick results, but quick, big results. And I had some early wins with that were smaller, but I expected the big paydays. I expected the big contracts. I expected the big stuff, right? And when they didn't happen, then I was disappointed. But through that process, I learned I've got to put in the work. I have to develop myself. I have to learn the skills. You know, I had to learn how to do marketing. I had to learn how to have sales conversations. I had to learn on and on and on, right? All the things. But it took me, I had to learn that just because you have a vision doesn't mean it just happens. You have to do the work that's required, or it's just wishful thinking, right?
Yeah, you know, I look at this over and over and over again. And like, I was talking to my son yesterday and I told him, I said, do you remember your eighth grade graduation? He was like, no, like he didn't remember at all. I said, that was the only graduation speech that I ever remembered. He goes, you remember my eighth grade graduation speech? I go, yeah, because it was the only speaker that said anything worthwhile. You're like elementary and high school ones. I'm like, none of them, most of them were terrible. And he's just looking at me like, yeah, they all sucked except for this one. And I said, she looked at everybody and said, told you what it took to succeed. And she said, it's not about your talent. It's not about your skills. It's not about your abilities. It's not about your connections. Said studies have shown again and again and again, the thing that determines your level of success is grit. Will you keep going?
Mhm.
Will you just keep putting in the effort day in and day out? And if you will not give up and you will just keep doing the work day in and day out, eventually, even if you don't know what you're doing,
Mhm.
eventually you will figure it out
Yeah.
and things will start to happen and success will start to come. But that effort has to be there. Without the effort, skill. And like, again, you can, I will always argue that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time,
I
but he would
concur.
never, what's that?
I concur.
Okay. You're not going to fight me on that one,
Nope.
but, I don't think LeBron's close, but that's
I'm with you on that too.
One of the things that set him apart was that guy outworked everybody. That guy had all the talent in the world. He could jump. He could do things that you're. I mean, like, there were times where we thought the guy could half fly, the way how athletic he was, and yet the thing that separated him was how much effort he put in to get himself better.
Yeah,
and that you cannot replace that. If you're willing to do the work, put in the effort, anything's possible for you.
and I think the key in this too is, and I've had to learn this because I'm an action taker. So putting in the work is not my problem. What I've had to learn is to put in focused, persistent work, right? So I've learned years ago that I could be busy without being productive if I'm not careful. And I think this is also kind of a cautionary thing in this is don't just be busy, be focused, be productive, and do the right things because I remember, I mean, and I'm much better at this now. And a lot of it's just time constraints help you with, when you gotta get things done, you just have to focus better. And, but when I kind of had too much time on my hands early on at you trying to build things, I could just be busy with a bunch of email or just administrative minutia that really didn't move the needle. But I'm like, well, I'm busy. And the other thing, David, that it really took for me to shift from to an entrepreneurial mindset was getting out of just a 9 to 5 mentality. It took me a while to realize that I could work honestly a half a day, many days, most days, and be more productive by lunchtime than most people can be by the end of a day or even a couple days with the right focus. So, but a lot of times we think we just have to put in 8 hours a day because that's kind of the societal norm. Well, I know I'm not good for 8 hours a day, honestly, right? I'm good for sprints. I'm good for dedicated time blocks. But I had to focus and I had to be persistent and consistent with that. And so putting in that effort is really critical. But doing it the right way on the right things. It's that whole 80-20 principle, right? 20% of the activities give you 80% of your results. Right. And figuring out what are those 20% things and being able to, and we've had other shows on this, so we won't go into it, but delegating and sometimes deleting things, dumping things off your plate so that you can focus on those 20% activities is critical, and continuing to hone that down. Because I was just thinking about this here today. I read something a while back, but it was basically, once you get your 20% figured out, guess what? You can actually look at what's 20% of that 20%. Right. That, so you can keep, so you can keep narrowing your focus. And that's where the magic really starts to happen, is when you start really figuring out like, okay, I've whittled things down to this, but what can I keep, figuring out that's really, I think it really leads us to our zone of genius, where if I'm just doing this one or two things, I'm really going to thrive. And that takes time. It takes time to figure out.
And I think that's exactly, I was hoping you were going to go there, because I think that is the point, is like none of us are great at everything.
Right.
And we all need to come to grips with that. It's like, as much as when you start your business, you have to be like the person who wears all the hats.
Right.
You have to be the person who does all of these things. But the reality is none of us are great at everything.
Yeah.
That human being doesn't exist. So you need to let go of that. And the reality, even more so, is what you just said, is each one of us are really outstanding at usually a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, when I do this, it's like almost just magic. It just, things just come, and they come naturally, and they come easily, and it just works. And that's where I'm just in my zone of genius. And you need to live there as much as you can, and then surround yourself with people who are good in other areas. And that's when things really start to go.
Well, and that kind of leads us to this kind of final thought on this point, is just how, dedicating yourself to developing those skills. Once you figure that stuff out where you're really good at it, then, okay, how do I really lean into that? How do I continue to really refine that? And, there are things in my journey that have surprised me that I'm good at that I didn't know, right? I didn't know that because I didn't even necessarily need to utilize certain skills um, in previous roles and jobs and things. But then with my business, you're like you said, you have to wear a lot of hats at first, but then you start to realize, okay, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. So when you figure out the things that you are stronger in, then leaning into that and really growing and developing those things, sharpening those skills, that's where precision can really happen in your business. It's, the funny story of the guy that, was called in by a company with a broken down, machine, and he comes in with a little hammer and looks at the machine and taps a spot and it works again, and sends them a $10,000 bill for like 10 minutes worth of time.
Right.
And they're like, well, why you were only here 10 minutes? Seems like, so you itemize it, like $10 for the hammer, 99 or $9,990 for knowing where to hit.
Yeah. Hey, and all the years of experience that led me
Yeah.
to that. Right.
So, it's that whole thing, right? I mean, we all have that. We just, too many people haven't,
Right.
really done I will say, the deeper work of really figuring that out. And
Right.
so, folks, our whole point in all this today is, your success it's the possibility is there, but it's not inevitable if you don't do these things we're talking about. If you're not getting yourself in the right mindset, if you're not creating the right environment for your success, if you're not putting in the required effort, because too many people, it's, once again, it's wishful thinking. We want something that we're not willing to do the work on. And so as entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter whether you're a coach, a speaker, a course creator, a trainer, whatever thing you do, whatever service you provide, you have to put in the work. And too many times we evaluate our current state and where we are at the beginning of the journey to somebody's, late stage journey state. And we think, well, they're not working that hard. Well, yeah, they aren't, maybe, but you know
Now,
what they did for the last 10 or 15 or 20 or 30
right,
or 40 years?
right. Now they're not working that hard. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a local guy that owns I think he's I think it's 40 years in the landscaping business, and he's got this brand, this company, and now he's got his own podcast where and he does a lot of speaking to talk about helping landscapers build successful businesses. He's giving back now to his industry, and people be like, well, I want to do that. Well, yeah, but do you want to do what it took for the 30 or 40 years to get there? He's a super good guy now, and he's doing great things, and he's enjoying a different season of his life. But I guarantee on day one, he wasn't just taking it easy, I mean, so anyway, folks, if you need help with your business, if you say, you know what, I don't have I don't have the community that I need to around me, or I don't have the expertise to help, navigate the questions I have, the challenges I have, that's why we build our Design Launch Grow program, because we truly are passionate about helping you build the business of your dreams, serving clients and customers you love. And if we can help you with that, check out designlaunchgrow.com. We would love to have you as part of our program and our community, because we believe that more of us who are out there doing this with a passion of our God-given calling and talent, we're going to make the world a much better place than what we're currently seeing and experiencing. And so that's the opportunity we have. But once again, we need to take action in those. So join us at designlaunchgrow.com. We'd love to have you join us, and we will see you next time on the show.